Have you ever spent your whole life working towards something only to have it stolen by the people you trusted the most? I'm McKenzie. I'm 22 now, but this story began long before that. Since I was 7, my parents told me they were saving money for my college. They promised me I could go to any school I wanted, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. They said, "We believe in you." So I worked hard every single day. I gave up parties, TV, even sleep, all for that dream. And when I got accepted into Yale, it felt like the world was finally opening up for me. But then 2 weeks before I was supposed to move in, everything changed. My parents sat me down and told me, "We lost the money. Your college fund, it's gone." I was devastated, but something didn't feel right. Then one night I overheard my dad and brother celebrating in the living room. They were laughing about using that same money to fund my brother Nathan's business. The money wasn't lost, it was stolen by my own family, but they didn't know I had already set my own plan in motion. Before I tell you how I turned this betrayal into my biggest success, drop a comment and subscribe. And tell me, have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? I grew up in suburban Boston. I was the responsible child. While other kids played video games, I made color-coded homework charts. My dad, Robert, was a pharmaceutical sales manager, always telling his coworkers how smart I was. My mom, Diana, was an accountant. She spent hours helping me with math. They were proud, at least that's what I thought. When I was 7, they showed me a folder, McKenzie's college fund. "We're saving every month," my mom said, "so you can go to the best school in the country." That folder became my motivation. I joined the debate team, volunteered at the hospital, and won science fairs. I even kept a 4.0 GPA all through high school. My little brother Nathan, he was the opposite of me. He was wild, careless, always getting in trouble. He failed classes, crashed cars, but my parents always bailed him out. When he totaled his first car, they bought him a better one. When he nearly failed high school, Mom begged the school to pass him. But when I got an A instead of an A+, they asked, "Did you not study hard enough?" Still, I thought they loved me. I thought they had different expectations, but I was wrong. By senior year, my dream was clear. I wanted to go to Yale. Their biochemistry program was top ranked. I even connected with a professor doing research in my area of interest. I spent weeks on my application, late nights writing essays, mock interviews with my counselor, and finally, I got the email, accepted. I screamed so loud our neighbor called to check if I was okay. That night, we went to the best restaurant in town to celebrate. My dad said, "We've saved about $150,000. It won't cover everything, but it'll get you most of the way." I was so happy. Everything I had worked for was finally coming true. I joined Yale Facebook groups. I picked my dorm. I started reading my textbooks early. My mom helped me shop for dorm stuff, sheets, a mini fridge, even a new desk lamp. Even Nathan seemed proud, though he had no plans for college. He said he was taking a gap year to find himself. Looking back, I missed the signs. My parents got quiet when I talked about my schedule. They had more private talks with Nathan, and when I entered the room, those conversations would suddenly stop. But I didn't think much of it at the time, because I trusted them. 2 weeks before I was supposed to move into Yale, my dad called a family meeting. He sounded serious. I thought it was about the drive to New Haven. When I came downstairs, Mom was crying. Dad looked tense. Nathan was playing on his phone like he didn't care. Then they said at McKenzie, "We lost your college fund." I couldn't breathe. Lost how? Dad told me he invested it in a real estate deal without telling me. The developer ran off with the money. The fund was empty. For the all gone. They said they were so sorry, but it didn't feel like enough. Not after all my years of sacrifice. Then I noticed something strange. Nathan didn't look shocked. Not even a little. Later that week, I heard them talking. My dad congratulated Nathan on getting funding for his startup. That was my money. I was in shock. I felt used, betrayed, broken. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there staring at the wall. I thought about all those nights I stayed up studying, while they were planning to give everything I earned to someone else. But I wasn't going to let them break me. That night, I got to work. I emailed Yale's financial aid office. I explained everything. I applied for emergency grants, last-minute scholarships, and every student loan I could qualify for. I created a new budget. I would work part-time. I would live cheap. No spring breaks, no extras, just me and the goal. And it worked. I started at Yale 2 weeks later. Was it hard? Incredibly. I worked nights at a cafe, cleaned labs on weekends, studied between shifts, but I made it. 4 years later, I graduated near the top of my class. Today I work in medical research, and I've already paid off most of my loans. Nathan's business, it failed in less than a year. My parents never apologized. They still don't talk about what they did, but I don't need their approval anymore. I learned the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes the people who betray you the worst are the ones you grew up trusting the most, but their betrayal doesn't have to be the end. In my case, it was just the beginning. Even after I made it to Yale, things didn't go back to normal. I didn't speak to my parents much after I moved out. I kept my distance, not out of anger, but for peace. They called sometimes, left messages. "Hope school is going well," they'd say. But they never mentioned what they did. No apology, no explanation, nothing. At holidays when I came home, it was awkward. The warmth I once felt in that house was gone. Nathan would talk about his latest ideas and side hustles, like nothing had ever happened. My parents smiled and nodded, acting proud while never once asking how I was managing my bills, my stress, or my life. I felt like a guest in my own home. One evening, during winter break, I overheard Nathan complaining to Mom that he couldn't get a loan for another project. And Mom said something I'll never forget. "We already did everything we could for McKenzie. It's Nathan's turn now." That line broke something in me. Everything they had promised me, everything I had earned, was treated like a mistake they had to fix for Nathan. But instead of crying, I smiled. Because by that time, I had already built something stronger than their support: self-reliance. By junior year at Yale, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was growing. I started mentoring other students from difficult family situations. I shared my story with honesty, not bitterness. People listened. Some cried. Some told me they were going through the same thing. That's when I realized my pain had power. I started a blog called Built from Breakage. I wrote about resilience, betrayal, rebuilding. Within a few months, it had thousands of readers. One of my posts even went viral. A nonprofit organization that helps first-gen and financially struggling students reached out. They offered me a summer internship, then a part-time position, and eventually a grant to develop my own mentorship program. By the time I graduated, I wasn't just a Yale student. I was a speaker, a mentor, and a name people looked up to. When I stood on that graduation stage, I didn't see my parents in the crowd. They weren't there, but that day, I didn't need them to be, because I had already become everything they once promised I could be, without their help. And I knew I'd never let anyone else write my future again. I thought I had moved on. I believed that my silence was enough of a message. But healing isn't always quiet. Sometimes it needs a voice. One day, during my final semester at Yale, I got a call from home. Mom was in the hospital. It wasn't life-threatening, but serious enough that I had to visit. I hadn't been home in over a year. When I walked into that hospital room, Mom looked older, tired. She smiled weakly and said, "You look like a real grown-up now." I sat beside her. There was silence at first. Then she whispered, "I know we hurt you." That caught me off guard. She didn't cry. She didn't make excuses. She just stared at the ceiling and said, "I thought we were doing what was best for both of you, but maybe we were just too scared to admit our mistakes." I didn't say anything. Not at first. Then I asked something I had been holding in for years. Why him? Why take everything meant for me and hand it to Nathan? She looked at me with eyes full of old guilt and said, "Because Nathan wouldn't survive without it. But you were always strong. We thought you'd figure it out." I almost laughed. Strength isn't a reason to betray someone. Strength doesn't mean I deserved less. But I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just said, "You should have believed in me enough to tell me the truth." When I left the hospital that day, I didn't feel healed, but I felt something close to peace. Not because she apologized perfectly, but because I had finally spoken. And sometimes, that's all it takes to reclaim a piece of yourself. I'm not the same McKenzie I was when I first got into Yale. Back then, I thought success meant being the best, winning awards, making parents proud. Now I know better. Success is building a life you don't need to escape from, even when no one claps for you. I graduated with honors, got into a top graduate program. I now lead my own organization, helping young people fund their education when their families can't or won't. I speak at events. I write. I advocate. But most importantly, I listen, because I know how it feels to be the girl sitting alone with acceptance letters in one hand and betrayal in the other. If I could speak to the 18-year-old version of myself, the one who sat on the edge of her bed after that family meeting, I'd tell her this: you're going to be okay. You'll cry a lot. You'll question everything. But you'll also build something powerful, something that no betrayal can touch. And one day, your story will help someone else survive theirs. We don't get to choose the family we're born into, but we can choose the family we build around us. We can choose resilience. We can choose purpose. And we can choose to turn our pain into something greater than silence. I don't know what's ahead of me next, but I do know this: I'll never again wait for someone else to save me, because I already did.